Hello, everyone. Welcome to Recipe
Hello.
for Reality, aka the Dylan and Zach Tell All, because we are talking about the Men Tell All on, I almost said Caitlin, on Michelle's season of The Bachelorette. Caitlin was the star of the show, hosting the whole thing,
Literally.
especially when she had to ride solo, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we'll talk about Survivor, because this was also a groundbreaking episode of Survivor. A lot of great
Yeah.
conversation just in terms of like social stuff going on in the world, and also a huge twist, which we'll talk about, which was definitely controversial in the Survivor community. Once again, let's start with Bachelorette, just because there's not really much to dive into. I mean, very clear cut. I mean, Martin was confronted about what he said, kind of danced around an apology.
Yeah.
Jamie kind of danced around an apology. Chris kind of danced around an apology. I mean, it was a lot of dancing going on. It's as if we hadn't gone away with Dancing with the Stars anyway. It's as if it was on our Monday night TVs as always. But I think most of the drama that I love to see was the
Yeah.
Peter and Will drama.
Oh,
That stuff was just insanely funny. What do you think of this whole mental thing, and especially Peter and Will? Because the other guys, it was like whatever. They got
right.
booed by the crowd. They danced around an apology, whatever. But
Yeah.
this stuff was juicy. This was great.
I mean, I love it because one of the things that I feel like is missing from a men tell all like this is we already know who the Bachelor is. And
Right.
so all of that like drama of like, oh, who's putting on a good face tonight? We're gonna find out who's auditioning. Like, all right,
Right.
cool. We've got some something to look forward to, or not even look forward to, but something to kind of conspire have conspire whatever the word is, conspire.
Conspire.
Cat Dunning would be so disappointed in me. We have something to conspire about. We're like, oh well, so and so had a really good, hot seat. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I like about
Rodney.
what are you talking about? I don't know who you're talking about. Only one of the best Bachelor contenders we could have had. Whatever.
And Rick. I mean, yeah, really great. Olu.
Rick.
So many.
Any of them. Brendan or Nate, if they don't get whatever. But what I did like is I did feel as though the ones who like the Peter and Will drama, that is prime Paradise. That's prime Paradise. And some
that's
of the
Aaron
stuff
and
that
Thomas for sure.
right, that's like, and they buried the hatchet at the end, but like what I loved about that is it's all the drama that I want, but with none of the regular season stuff, right? It's not getting in the way of Michelle finding love. It's exactly what I want when I watch a season of Paradise and it gets on there and I'm like, oh, this is juicy. This is good. I loved it. I loved the tell your sister to stop sliding into my DMs. Oh, yeah. Brilliant.
It was
brilliant.
Interesting because going into this, we're all team Will, obviously. But as the night went on, there were moments where I was like, I felt kind of bad for Peter at times. Like there was that moment where like the sister thing was funny, but then like also when like you found out that Will was writing all these bad reviews for his pizza place, I'm like, he brought up a good point. Like it is his business, it is his livelihood. Like I did kind of feel bad, and then at the end when he's like, "Well, I got you all the pizza," and everyone's liking it, and Will's like, "Yeah, no, this is pretty good." I was like, "Well, literal taste of your own medicine."
I don't know if I think Will wrote those. I think that's producers.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't think he wrote them. I think it's so hard to tell nowadays with all of this stuff, like who's writing, who is just like kind of going along with it. They might have been like, "Hey, listen, man, you take the heat for this. You got a seat on the beach. You got a seat on the beach with your name on it."
Yeah, I think that this is like the Bachelor producers being like, this is kind of the teasers of storylines that could come in Bachelor in Paradise. Will and Peter, I think, are locks if they want to be.
100%.
I think Rodney could be there. I think Rick could be there, obviously. But I think like we got also a lot from like Casey, who we didn't hear a lot from in the season. It reminds me of Dylan Barber, was not very vocal on Hannah Brown season, goes on and sweeps up Hannah Godwin and like goes to the finale. And now they're the most beloved couple.
Now everyone loves them.
It reminded me of that. Like Casey, you could see Olu. I could definitely see Olu going there. Even the villains, Martin, Chris. I don't think Chris wants anything to do with Bachelor anymore. He just seemed kind of checked out. And when Michelle accepted his apology, she was like, "You know what? Thank you for apologizing. I hope you're well too." Like Chris just seems like he was like wrong place, wrong time. didn't mean to mess with. Thought everyone was against Nate, wasn't really
Yeah.
against Nate, and he was just like, checked out, I'm done.
Yeah.
But like I think there's a lot of good candidates now for Paradise. I think
Oh yeah.
this kind of teased a lot. Even like Romeo got his voice in there, was very likable.
My guy
Pradeep, you know,
Romeo, my guy
yeah,
Romeo,
like
my guy Pradeep, those
yeah,
people that we didn't get to see, right? I
right.
think that's the biggest thing about this season for me is that it's really been uneventful. We lost out on a lot of the drama
Hmm.
because there really has kind of been like two clear-cut front runners the entire time. Brendan and Nate have really taken um
Hmm.
the passenger seat and
Hmm.
then the driver's seat just in general,
Yeah.
and then everyone else is kind of piling in the back. You had Rodney, you've got Joe,
Hmm.
Martin,
Chris. Yeah.
all of those classics, like, oh yeah, like we're looking. It's kind of like how in Katie's season you knew that Greg was a front runner, but they kept teasing that there was going to be that big blowout. So even though he was a front runner, in the back of your mind, you're like, I know he's a front runner, but like he's not sticking around. He
Yeah.
probably isn't sticking around. So you're looking for who's going to come out on top. And then you get the Michael drama. You see Michael leave. This whole season, it's been very like, all right, like there's drama, but they're not making it to final
Hmm.
three. They're not
And
making it to final
yeah,
four.
and like you said with Greg and Michael, no one has broken her heart. It's all just been
Right.
her. The closest thing to that was Jamie, and that's because she heard what he was saying behind her back and was like, "I have no choice but to boot you."
Right.
Everyone else has been very much, and kind of Martin a little bit too, but everyone else has been like sent home by Michelle's volition,
Right.
and I think that's just the difference between that and Katie's season, where her, I, I'd like to believe her two front runners, Greg and Michael, both quit. So
I agree.
then she's left with her number three, which is Blake. And we'll see how that worked out.
And then her number 30, which was John.
John, exactly, and that just goes to show friendships need to develop first.
Right.
And I think the fact that Katie had that time to be friends with John outside, they were able to develop a real connection that wasn't rushed, wasn't forced, wasn't in the midst of all these other relationships. She said the reason she sent him home is because he was quiet. And that's just who John is. But in the real world, when it's just you and John, yeah, he can be quiet, but he can also open up then.
Right.
But on a season where you're one of 30 and you're the quiet one, you just don't get the time. And
Right.
I can see that happening. But I want to talk about two more things. One being the preview for the next time. I'm thinking the next episode, because we're going to be going into both Bachelorette and Survivor finale predictions. I think we should save who our winner pick for Bachelorette is for then.
Agreed.
But I did think this teaser was very good. I thought it was more clear cut, like you said, Brandon versus Nate, but this preview was very much Brandon versus Nate, and Joe just kind of being on his own, feeling good on the
Yeah.
side. I don't know. I mean, it seems like Brandon and Nate are going to start going at one another. Everyone feels like they're confident. Everyone thinks they have it in the bag at this point.
Right.
And then we also hear Caitlin say that this is going to be a very surprising, very heartbreaking watch of the Bachelorette finale, which makes me a little nervous because I never suspected this to be like a Jed situation.
Yeah.
But maybe we might see something like that. I don't know. But it was exciting. I like the preview. It kept me guessing. I don't think there's a clear cut favorite from that preview, which is nice.
Yeah, I think it's just been a slow burn up until now. Like this has been a slow burn of a season. We all of our friends in that one bit, and we have a big group chat going on.
Yeah.
A lot of our friends have checked out, and I think that's again, it's not because Michelle isn't a good Bachelorette. It's not because the guys aren't interesting. There just hasn't been a lot of guessing until now. Right now, right in this final three, in this finale prediction that we're making, like this is all of a sudden where the excitement is. And the problem is, and maybe this is why, and I've gone back and forth thinking about it. Maybe this is why they didn't just want Michelle as the Bachelorette in the first place. Not because she's not an amazing person or someone with an amazing story, because she does, but Michelle is a strong, independent woman, quite like Katie. But the difference is, I think Michelle is a little bit more refined, a little bit more confident in herself. Not in the same way that Katie is. Katie's also confident, but Michelle has an air about her that it's like there's no bullshit, no BS, no wishy-washy. She dealt with that on Matt's season. She she got to the end, dealt with him, really knowing what he wanted weeks in advance, and she got strung along. So she said, all right, if I'm going to be back on here and I'm going to be a role model for my kids, I have to be strong, and I have to stand firm on these things. So I think that's what makes her such a great Bachelorette, but it doesn't make for as great. It doesn't make for the TV that ABC's known for with the Bachelorette.
Right. But you look at after postseason, I mean, look at Katie. She's getting a lot of turned faces on Bachelor Nation. Like a lot of people are turning against her, don't
Mhm.
like her. Think she is as messy as her 12 days of messiness was. So, like, you know, this might be not great for the viewers and the ratings and all
Right.
that shit. But I think
But
Michelle
it's
will
great
be
for
okay at the
Michelle,
end. Yeah,
and
I think
that's
this
the
is
most
going to be a great journey for Michelle,
well,
and she
that's
clearly has lots of respect from those guys too.
oh yeah, and a lot of people, people say they're afraid to go on reality TV because they don't want it to ruin their life. She clearly said, what I do appreciate about her is she said, "I want love above everything else, and so I'm going to go on for love. And if I get love, that's what I want. If I don't, I'll walk away clean." And
Yeah.
that I respect that about her above everything else is
Hmm.
that she is walking away from this clean. And I
Yeah.
mean that's one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah. And then the last bit of drama, obviously, Tasha. And that was big. That was a weird moment only because it was like I understood they were going to address it, but like Caitlyn was like, as we all can tell, you're not wearing your wedding ring. I wasn't paying attention, so like I couldn't tell. It seemed like something that they maybe should have addressed at the very beginning or the very end. It was weird because it was right as they were calling up Rodney. She brings up the wedding ring thing. Rodney gets she talks about it a little bit. Doesn't say what happened, just that she's heartbroken. She still loves him. Doesn't know what the future holds, but she's heartbroken, meaning that it was probably him who broke it off. And then, or he did something that she had to break it off because I don't know. I don't want to speculate what he did, but
Right.
um, and then they call up Rodney, and then as Rodney's getting called up, she runs away crying, which makes sense. It's a lot. But then Rodney just has to sit there and be like, I'm sorry. I hope everything's okay with Deja." And then they're like, roll the clip, and they show all the clips of Rodney. So it was just a very weird timed moment. I don't know if they expected it to go that way. I didn't expect Tasha to open up more. I think she opened up enough, but
No.
it was hard to watch that moment, and I want to get your thoughts because that was rough.
Yeah, I don't think that what I really don't like, and this is
Hmm.
my big thing, because I do think it was important because Tasha is such a big figure in Bachelor Nation.
Yeah.
She's got such an enormous following. People have loved her for years, and they're going to continue to love her. What I really don't like, and what's not sitting well with me, and one of the main reasons that I'm very team her getting up and fucking leaving, is
Hmm.
that they used it as bait
Yeah.
in a preview. And
Oh, I
that
didn't know that. Okay.
oh yeah, it was on Instagram and it was on Twitter, and I saw it and I was like, that's pretty screwed up.
Okay.
What really makes me angry about it is that, you know, Zach and Tasia were a very prominent team. They were a team on the show. They were a team afterwards, and and again, not to speculate because we don't know what happens behind closed doors, but I would
Hmm.
like to imagine that a lot of what drove a wedge between them is the time apart that they spent.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of what that was her literally co-hosting this show.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so for the producers to kind of use that as a bait and a fodder for viewers to tune in because they know people want to know what happened between Zach and Tasha, I thought that
Hmm.
that was pardon me for any of the younger listeners. I thought that was fucked up. I thought that was
Okay, yeah.
super fucked up.
No, knowing how they use it for commercials and stuff, I was like,
Yeah.
wow, because I didn't know they were gonna address it.
Oh
I just
yeah.
knew, the news broke a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
which is probably when they filmed this, because they obviously pre-taped this. Next week's is live, but this was pre-taped.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's fucked up.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
heart goes out. My heart goes out to both of them, regardless of
yeah.
what happened. I mean,
Hmm.
what always kind of breaks me is that you can tell that
Public
they really
breakups.
love.
Oof.
Well, not only is it public, you can tell that they really love each other. Like
Hmm.
they were partners, and for them to separate was big.
Hmm. Yeah,
Because
bigger than Katie and Blake. Yeah.
Katie and Blake, everyone saw that coming. And what more was shocking was that then she started dating John so soon. I think that's the big thing with Katie.
Yeah.
But like, you know, you've got that coming off of Matt or Rachel, just Rachel just posting on Instagram saying like man of my dreams, things like that. And that was the
Yeah.
one that everyone thought would fall apart.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, that's not gonna last. That thing is doomed. And
Hmm.
they had broken up and then they came back together, which I don't know how people feel about that still, but it doesn't really matter.
I
I
honestly think they had their big thing early enough that they were able to recover. I think when
yeah,
you're so far into a relationship and something big happens, sometimes it's hard to bounce
it's
back
hard.
and recoup from
Yeah.
that. But I think Rachel and Matt got it early enough to like be able to recover by the time the season even
Yeah.
aired. I think the whole breakup thing was more of like a just thing to make audiences aware that it was not okay what she did, but like I think
Yeah.
they always intended on still being together. And also because he didn't propose at the finale. So I think that's
Right.
also another thing too. There wasn't that pressure.
Yeah.
There was that we can take a little time off and just get back together. No deal. No big deal. But when it's Zach and Tasha, there's a ring there. So if you break up, you're taking
Yeah.
off the ring, and then if you get back together, you got to think
What do
about
you do?
reproposing and all this stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like it's
It.
hard to break off an engagement as opposed to just what Rachel and Matt did, which was let's take time off,
Yeah.
reassess what we need to do separately first before we can then do this together. But then once we're together, it's easy and we can just move
Right.
right along because there's no pressure, there's no time, there's no clock ticking.
Yeah, I mean, in the words of, ironically, Brendan, I really do hope that their time apart makes them realize that they are perfect for each other and that they need each
Yep.
other. But more importantly than that, I wish her and him, but she's still very much in the public eye. We haven't heard from
Yeah.
him since their breakup.
No.
I wish them, you know, happiness. That's
Yeah.
the most important
Me
thing.
too.
Yeah, and I think we've brought this up before, but like this is when I remind people and anyone listening, these are real people. This is what I
Yeah.
said with
Yeah.
Big Brother. It's what I'll say with this. It's what I'll say with Survivor. It's what I'll say with everything. These are real people, and I think we tend to forget. People freaking out over Katie and Blake, and now Katie and John. She's a real person. She's allowed to do what she wants.
Yeah.
She is allowed to be a grown woman who makes her own choices
Yeah.
and lives her own life, whatever she wants to do. Death threats, never cool. Public shaming, never cool. Those
No.
things, like, I really hope that no matter what the
Mm-hmm.
story is, people remember to not play with these lives like they're characters in a game or pieces on a chessboard.
Yeah.
There's a time for the game, and then there's a time to remember that they're real. So that's
Yeah.
my last final thought
Yeah. No,
on the
that's
men
good.
tell all.
Well, and I think that segues perfectly to Survivor this week too, because there was a lot of that conversation of like, what is the best game move versus what do I want
Right.
personally? It's something we saw Big Brother toy with a little bit, but they were so committed to this mission because it was
Right.
literally the only time they could do it. Here, it's
Right.
like there have been black winners, there have been black winners of both genders, there have been people of all ages and sizes who have won this game, homosexual, heterosexual. Like there's been so many walks of life that have won Survivor, but again, it still doesn't change the fact that
Right.
this is a microcosm of real life. And hearing Deshaun open up in Tribal Council about why he did what he did with Shan, and that he did prioritize game over personal feelings, but that he could still not get over those personal feelings right away. I think that was a
Right.
huge moment. And I think that was a
Agreed.
very important moment in Survivor. And we'll get to like the game itself soon. But I think that was just such an important thing to hear,
Yeah.
especially hearing also Xander's point of view and Heather's point of view. It did feel a little awkward for Erica and Ricard because they are also people of color, but they're not black. So they were kind of like,
Right.
we didn't really hear from them, but it was really interesting to hear the two white contestants' perspectives on this whole thing, and then to hear from Danny, who's very much cool, calm, collected, and like,
Yeah.
I hope this is a good, sets a good example for future survivors. Then we have someone like
Agreed.
Deshaun who's saying like, I'm still struggling with this move I
Yeah.
made, and then Liana who's saying like, no, like I'm here to send that message and I'm proud of it, and and she really went down guns blazing, and it was a really really important episode, I think. And I think it made up for the stressful just twist that we'll get to in a sec that I was annoyed with for a little bit of time. But yeah, I think it was a very important episode in showing just how real games are.
Yeah.
Reality TV is reality TV.
Yeah.
It's real, even behind the strategy and the drama and the way editors twist things and producers twist things and Jeff prompts
Yeah.
things. So, what do you think of this episode in general, though, before we get into the twist and strategy and all that?
I mean, it was. I don't know if heartbreaking is the right word. It was more. It was more just like overwhelming.
Yeah.
In a good way. I mean,
Yeah.
the conversations that Liana is speaking about, that Deshaun is speaking about, that Danny, even Xander. I mean, it's hard as you're sitting there. And Liana even says it like, like for the people saying like, I wish we could just get to the game. I mean, this is part of the game, and she's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And I
Mhm.
it's so I was following Twitter along kind of afterwards, and I'd seen it the night of, but then I went back before
Mhm.
after I watched, And conversations like this are so divisive, and I always struggle to kind of understand where people are coming from
Mhm.
when we find ourselves in such a divisive moment, because uh, it really showcases what humanity means to people. And I know that this is getting super philosophical, but in the
No,
regards to
it's
the
fine,
game,
yeah. Mhm.
I'm my Big Brother super fan showing, this season alone. You know me, my one big complaint over and over again was like, I feel like there's no game being played. I feel like there's no game
Yeah,
being played. And the truth is,
too samey.
there were a lot of games being played. They were just for a cause that doesn't really affect me.
Mhm.
And when I say it doesn't affect me, I don't mean like, oh, I shouldn't care about it, but it wouldn't benefit me in the house. So as a
Mhm.
person wanting to see the game, I'm like, this would really not work for me. So I'm not enjoying myself. But from the whole of what the game is, which is a social experiment, the same way that Survivor is, I mean, the fact that the fact that you get to watch Deshaun openly like weep openly
Mhm.
weep over this internal struggle that, me sitting at home, a straight white man going, I don't get the struggle, which is exactly what Xander said. But
Yeah.
there's someone sitting somewhere else watching going, I can play the game now
Yeah.
because I'm watching someone like me play it. I know that I would
Mhm.
feel that way. And I know that one of everyone's biggest gripes was Liana gave this whole brilliant speech and then they voted her out anyway. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what, though? Here's the thing about Liana. You now, unfortunately, she makes this beautiful speech. She gives this well thought out argument, and now you know that she's smart enough to maneuver her way around the people around you,
Mhm.
and that's part of the game.
Yeah, it's
And if
like
you
it
weren't
it goes back to the game. Either way, you still gotta vote someone out at the end of the day, and that's what's so tough, you
right,
know?
or
And
you
it brings
or you wouldn't have,
yeah.
and that the twist would have kind of like done the
Yeah.
work for you,
And that would have been the biggest letdown after that whole
right?
conversation to see Deshaun go home because of it, and not even because he
Right,
made the move against Shan. Because in retrospect, is voting out Shan the best move when Liana's the next to go and now you and Danny are on the bottom?
right.
Probably
No,
not, because in
no,
the end, now I hate to say it, but this Black Alliance has now lost 2 in a row, and it's likely that Deshaun or
right,
Danny, if they don't find the idol or win immunity, or one of them is maybe next.
right,
But there's still so much game left to be played.
right,
But it brings me back to Ricard and Shan's conversation in the last episode, the previous episode, where he turns to her and he's like, "I don't know if I could do this," and she goes, "Well, I don't know either because a woman. It's really tough for a woman to win this game because a
right,
lot more of the time, if a woman and a man are sitting next to each other, some people just think the man did the more strategic work a lot of the time." But
right,
then he goes, "But this is 2021, and people know that, so maybe I'm at the disadvantage because now people are
right.
going to feel inclined to vote for a woman." I think that's an interesting conversation too because like there's that idea of
Yeah,
like what is this jury in this time period, in this present
right,
day, going to vote for? What are they going to honor most? Is it going to be if a black person sitting in them, they're just going to vote for it because of
right,
the year we've had? Are they going to vote for the best strategist regardless? Are they going to vote for a woman regardless, a man regardless? Like it really, you don't know. And
right,
that's why every season is different. That's why it's so exciting every season. Even more so for me than Big Brother because there's that element of surprise also of not knowing
right.
necessarily how it's going to pan out, who's going to win all these challenges. And it
Yeah.
brings us so many great social conversations. Um, but yeah, do you think it was a good move though, Deshaun voting out Shan now? Because
Oh,
in
voting out
now it's
Shan?
yeah, because now we see Deshaun and Danny are now officially on the outs because this team of Ricard, Xander, Erica, and Heather seem pretty tight.
I you know what? Here's my thing. Not voting Shan out really doesn't seem like a good move, but I honestly don't know if keeping Shan in would have been a good move because the truth is, unless Danny and we'll see this in my ranking,
Right.
unless Danny or Deshaun get an idol, I mean they're at the bottom.
Yeah.
And the truth is, with Shan there, sure they're not at the bottom for another week, but they're not going to win the game. And I with Shannon, they do have
With
a
Shannon.
shot to
Okay. Yeah.
win the game
Without her.
without her.
Hmm.
And I think that honestly, I think the harder move was not getting rid of Ricard. I think that Ricard would have been the call this week, amongst everyone.
Hmm.
Um, if
And it's
for
interesting
Danny and
because Danny, Deshaun, and Liana still do vote together. and it's really just the
Right.
fact that they're just outnumbered now because they
And
don't have Shan. Yeah,
right. And I mean, at the end of the game, or at the end of the day, I think that's more of like I think Xander, Erica, and Heather are gonna look back and go, "Wow, we had him on a silver platter, and we didn't do it." And I won't spoil my winner pick, but I
yeah,
do just think that I think the two. Well, we'll put this. I'm gonna maneuver into my ranking because I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that it's just easier
Yeah.
that way.
Before we
I
get to
right.
the ranking though, can we just talk about the twist real quick? Because
Oh
that
yes, 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 yes.
when they announced the twist, I said this is
Yeah, it's
bullshit.
garbage.
Someone
It's
is getting a
garbage.
50-50 shot for
It's garbage.
competing for immunity. You want to compete for immunity to save your life, and now by competing for immunity, you risk
Garbage.
going home. That being said, I
Garbage.
think I think Jeff telling them about it beforehand, I'm okay with now. Because the thing is, the last twist, after they had already won immunity, Jeff then
Right.
said, Erica, you get to switch this. That I
Right.
think was unfair because now they are obviously always going to go for the challenge. This week, at least, he told them if you play in this challenge and you're out first, you will have a
Right.
50% chance of going home, which in this case we've learned was a 33% chance of going home. But I think him telling them, though, that I think that at least gives the players a choice. So I always think with a big twist like this, you have to give the players a choice, and
Yeah.
he did.
You
So I'm
gotta let them
okay.
know.
I don't like the twist, but I am okay with him.
Yeah.
I'm okay with this twist because it was specifically told to the players, not necessarily what the odds were. We didn't know it was going to be a 1 in 3 shot, but again, it was like very much you by playing this, you are putting yourself at risk, and everyone understood that and they played,
Right.
and except for Heather and Liana. But like I do think that that is the way to approach a twist like this when it's so random. You could just go home randomly for picking the wrong box,
Right.
which I can't believe he did pick the right box. Yeah, it
I
was
can't believe he picked the
crazy.
right box. I can't believe he picked the right box and then didn't go back on it. Go back on his choice because if it's me, I probably would have, and I would have gone
Yeah,
home. I
yeah,
would always feel unsafe.
because immediately I said, I'm picking. I know it's not going to be the middle box, and I'm not going to pick the box closest to me. I would pick the right box, and the right box was the first one out. So I really would have been gone home. But again, I think if given this choice, I wouldn't even play because I know if
Yeah,
I go,
I
at
wouldn't have.
least at
I would not have.
least yeah, at least if I'm not winning immunity, but at least I have a shot to try to save myself with the social and strategic game. Whereas the other one is like, if you lose, Deshaun was just
Honestly,
literally just waiting till tribal council to even know if he was safe or not. So
honestly, I couldn't believe Xander played. I was like, man, you're safe. You
yeah,
are safe. You don't have
yeah,
to play. Even if they want you out, you got that idol. Like, you are good. You
yeah,
could have gone out with an idol in your pocket all because you played for immunity that you
right.
have the majority. You don't even need it.
Well,
Um,
and here's the thing: we were talking last week, and I said, "Oh, it's no brainer. I think Danny's going to get screwed because he hasn't gotten the personal content." But right before the challenge, he gets the
boom,
personal content, and then he ends
boom,
up winning the challenge. I was like,
boom.
I was so happy to be wrong because I did
Yeah.
pick Danny. I'll show the rankings now. Last week, I had Danny at
Ah,
7. And yeah, look at that. Liana was one spot lower on mine, which means we're tied at 100. Perfect number to be tied at. But yeah,
wow.
I thought Danny would be the one screwed by the challenge, and the way it was
Yeah.
going when they gave him that personal content, I went, "Oh shit, they're giving him this great moment to then send him out."
Nah,
But then
man.
he ends up winning the
I
challenge,
couldn't.
and
I couldn't believe it.
the person who's probably had the biggest edit of everyone, except for maybe Xander and Ricard, is Deshaun. Like those three have been the ones dominating the edit. Deshaun's out first, and it was just
and
shocking to
and
me.
not even and to watch him go down within like 5 seconds was oof,
Yeah.
it hurt. It
Hmm.
hurt to watch. And you know what? I was CBS sucks at twists. They are bad at twists in both of their games. Both of their
Mm,
games. And Amazing Race never really has a twist. It's usually like it's
yeah.
more like you get a fun package if you are second,
Yeah.
or they end up keeping people for a longer amount of time, which I like a lot about that. But like, man,
Hmm.
CBS sucks at a twist because all of a sudden you've got this great gameplay. Deshaun's good at the game. He's good. He's got
Yeah.
a couple. He's
Yeah.
got a couple of tough moments, but like if anything, they really work to. I can't decide if they're so good. They're so bad at twists that it's just bad, or they're so bad at twists that they're good because
I don't know.
Deshaun goes home regardless. They're gonna send him home regardless.
Yeah, because
So
if he doesn't, yeah, if Danny still wins and Deshaun's not the one
right,
who goes home, and say like Ricard's out first and he plays and he's safe, They could,
Right.
yeah, they probably vote out
So,
Deshaun. Yeah.
so realistically, basically what happened was Danny and Deshaun earned immunity. Deshaun just almost went home instead of, he basically either went home on his own account or was safe. Like
Yeah.
that's really what it came down to.
Mhm.
But I mean, the twists are bad. The twists are bad because you've only got one idol in play. The idols have to go back in, and that now they finally have teased that, which is great. But like, you don't have any reason to do
Yeah.
this. You don't have any reason to do this
Yeah.
week. I could understand if it was a week where you were doing a double immunity plus this as a big twist, but like you have everything you need right now, so you don't need to do this. So
Yeah.
I don't
And you already have
understand
the shot in the
why.
dark, which is already this 1 in 6 shot of
And
losing
they
your bro
just
like,
know
there's
that
so much already that they've already thrown in there. They don't need this. Yeah,
no,
exactly.
this was stupid. I just thought it was dumb, and it was almost going to get rid of a really good player in the
Yeah.
worst possible way. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Mhm.
because here's the thing: if it had been Heather, whatever, but Heather knows she's not going to get this.
Yeah.
Heather knows that she has,
Well,
she's
and
got the best chance of going to the end because no one fucking
yeah.
cares.
As soon as they announced this twist, though, I said, "Okay, so we're losing someone who's obviously not integral to the story." Because I just
Right.
thought, yeah, no one's gonna survive this. And then when Heather sits out, I'm like, "Oh, so it's not gonna be Heather, so it just has to be Danny because Danny's up against Deshaun, Xander, and
Yep.
Ricard." I was like, "These are the 3 heavy hitters." And Erica, who, was also has been getting a big ramp up in her edit, but I was like, "Danny's really gonna go home," and then he wins. I was very surprised. Let's jump
I
into
was
our
happy.
rankings because
Yep.
we can talk about these players. We'll talk about them in context with the twist and also with this move because as we saw, Xander and Erica were the swing votes. They decided to stick with Ricard and Heather, voting out Liana, putting Danny and Deshaun at the bottom. But is our rankings going to be that clear cut? Are Danny and Deshaun just going to be at the bottom and the rest at the top? Or is there room for maneuvering? Number one, I think it should surprise no one. I still have Xander because he has the idol. So, like,
And
he's
it's
going to play
5.
it. This
So
is the last week he can play it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, no matter what, the idol should be played. He should play that idol. If I've got an
Sorry, this is
idol,
final 6, so he has 2 more shots to play it. But
oh no, it disappears at 5. I thought. I think he
he can
loses
play
it
it at
after
he
this
can
week.
play it at final 5.
Oh,
So,
well, I
but
mean,
either way, all it takes is if he wins immunity this week, then he plays a 5, and then at 4, if he wins the fire making challenge, he's in the final 3. So really, all
right.
he has to do is survive this week, and he's guaranteed final 3.
And honestly, with how it goes, I think he's going to win immunity at this point. I feel like he's in such a good spot. Immunity always comes down to him and Ricard and
Well,
somebody
not this
else,
week.
and not well. That's what I mean. It usually
Yeah.
comes down to him, Ricard, and somebody else. And so I think that even this week we're going to see pretty much the same thing, which is why Ricard's at my number 2. I think Ricard
Ooh.
consistently is in the
Okay.
top of immunity. I don't know what it fucking is, but he is so good at talking. He's brilliant at maneuvering around people. And I think that like the fact that he was able to survive this week alone was ridiculous. Deshaun is not a big threat.
Right.
And yet he had everyone's mind on Deshaun. The
Yeah.
only person whose mind he doesn't have full control of right now is Erica's.
Yes.
And
I have to ask though, this move that Xander plays, because he talks it through. He says either I could take out Ricard and make my big move for my resume, which I've been saying he needs a big move on his resume because the you don't know, but can you have this fake? Tiffany and Evie can easily take credit for it in the jury, and then he loses that move. He needs a move for himself. Erica's kind of like, oh, maybe we take out Ricard, and Xander and Erica are talking, and they ultimately decide to take out Liana. And Xander's argument is, I want to keep Ricard around as a bigger meat shield. But when you're at 6, how much longer can you hold on to a bigger meat shield? Because in the end, if you're sitting next to Ricard, he's your meat shield. But in the end, that's the person who's going to beat you, because I think Ricard, if you're sitting next to Xander, as much as the viewers are probably more like inclined to vote for Xander because he's just a more likable figure because Ricard's more of a villain this season.
Right.
I still think Ricard has the resume, and I think he's played just a better strategic game. He also had to face more adversity pre-merge. Like I think this was a bad move for Xander because I think if he decides to stick with
agree.
Danny, Deshaun, and Liana, there's a good chance he can get Ricard out and then even go back and use Erica and Heather to then get rid of Deshaun or Liana next week. It didn't really make sense to me, and I just think after every week, I lose a little bit more faith in Xander's game.
The way I can see Xander making a big move, and I literally just thought of this, is I think he's got to hit a point where if Ricard does not win immunity at this next week, I think what Xander's got to do in order to get rid of Ricard is say like, listen, we really need to make this move. He was like, he's got to be like, you got to convince him that the best move is to get rid of me. I'll play my idol and I'll write Ricard's name down and we'll get Ricard out because I'll be the only vote needed. And I think that would be smart and that would be a big move because he's using his immunity in order to get somebody else out specifically. But will we see that? I just think that Ricard is very good at talking. I think that and the other thing about him is that he's a consistent immunity winner. I think that he's very good at what he's doing. And I kind of like Xavier in Big Brother. You had him there and you didn't do it. And now you've given him a shot to the end.
Yeah, I think this was the week you had to get rid of Ricard, especially coming off of the Shan blindside, especially with Deshaun's speech, how he's like, Shan is the one calling me a snake, but in actuality, like Danny made this move too. Ricard made this move too, but I'm the snake.
And he owned it. And he owned it.
And I think that was a powerful move. And I think at that moment you have to go, okay, so like Deshaun is now clearing his name as a snake. He doesn't come across as snake-like because Shan is also crying in the jury. Like she's, I think, actually believing him and honestly like loosening up and warming up to him. It just was a weird turn of events I think Ricard going home this week would have been the prime move. And I don't think it should have been Liana. And especially to use both your votes. He used his extra vote to get out Liana to ensure it. I was just like, I don't think this is the right move for Xander. At 2, I have Heather, only because I think at this point, there's one more episode before the finale. Are they really going to make this big episode about Heather's boot? Right. And then at the end, we have these 5. Like, I think there's got to be someone who's just the obvious person who's going to lose in the end because this is a final 3, not a final 2 like Big Brother. Right. And, usually it's like 2 people duking it out and there's like a third person there that just kind of been dragged along. I think Heather's that person. I think she is very confidently my 3rd place pick. If she was going to go home, I said it was going to be during a double boot where you can care about one of the boots and then just throw the person who's been invisible in there, or she gets screwed with this twist, and she didn't get either. So I think she's definitely going to make the finale only because I don't see them wasting a whole episode, the penultimate episode on her boot, unless it's a crazy idol play or something like that. But I really just don't see Heather going anywhere this week. I don't think anyone should get rid of her. She's no threat to anyone. And I feel bad, but she's someone easy to beat in the end. So she's my number 2.
Yeah, she's my number 3.
Yeah.
And those are my top. Those are my final 3 up at the top.
Interesting.
Heather, cool. Xander, Ricard. And I just think that Xander with the idol, he's very good at what he's doing. He'll probably get through that fire challenge and he'd be fine. Ricard, unless someone makes the move to get rid of him, which is going to be very difficult if he wins immunity, he's sitting in the final 3. Mm-hmm. Heather, there's no reason to get rid of her. She's sitting in the final 3.
Yeah.
And then I think the bottom 3 for me are fighting for their life to be there in order to make final 4 and have a chance.
Yeah. Number 3, I have Erica, only because I think when it comes down to it, Danny and Deshaun are going to be targeting Ricard. Ricard's going to be targeting Danny or Deshaun, probably. I don't want to tip my hand as to who I have at the very bottom, but Ricard's going to be targeting one of the 2 of them. I think at this point, Xander and Erica are kind of the swing votes, but even then, it seems like Xander's now indebted to Ricard for some reason. Heather isn't going to make a flip. I think Erica's going to be the one to like force a tie or be the one to pull either Heather or Xander and say, we got to get rid of Ricard, or she's just going to go along with the flow. But either way, I don't see it being Erica. I think she really is the person controlling the tide. She is the swing vote. She's my number 3.
Yeah, she's my number 4 for the reasons that you just said. I mean, it's very simple. I don't think she's got much to worry about. I just think, again, if Danny or Deshaun have an idol and then one of the others wins immunity, you're not looking at Eric. You're looking at Erica and you're going like, we could easily get rid of her. She's got a big move. We should do something about it. Yeah. And again, Ricard's very tricky. So I think he could convince Xander to, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. She's just my 4 for that reason.
Yeah. At number 4, I have Danny, because I think this was the week where I was like really worried he'd go home, but he had an amazing episode. He had great personal content. And the last time Ricard had that really great episode about his hearing and all that. And I was like, oh, next episode, he's a goner, or he's going to like really
Make a
rise
big
from
move.
the ashes. And he did. He got rid of Shan, and it was going to be like I think I could see the same thing happening with Danny. He like finally had his breakout episode. My only thing is it might be a little too late. But if I'm looking at Deshaun and Danny on the outs, who are on the obvious outs, if Erica and Xander stick with Heather and Ricard, I don't see them going for Danny. I just think Danny's someone they probably think because he's just so calm, cool, and collected. It's easier to get rid of Deshaun now because Deshaun's a little bit more, I don't want to say snake, but like he's very good at like swiveling his way out of drama where and twisting things and making things strategic, whereas I think Danny's just straight up with you, so he's a little easier to take along. I think Danny's a stronger competitive threat, to win challenges, so they might want to take him out. But I think between the two of them, I think Deshaun's the more likely target than Danny. The problem is with 4 against 2, 2 of them can vote Danny, 2 of them vote Deshaun, and then Deshaun and Danny vote for, let's say, Ricard. Then you got a 2-2-2, and then on revote, they get to control either Danny or Deshaun. But even in that sense, I still think they vote out Deshaun. If Deshaun wins immunity, though, I think Danny's screwed. So I think it's just going to be a question of, whether or not Deshaun wins immunity, but he was the first person to fall out of this challenge, and it almost sent him home. So I don't think he'll win. But yeah, I think Danny's okay. I think Danny is someone I am just really just warming up to week after week after week. I really like him. I hope he sticks around. It's a little bit of a selfish pick, but I do think of the two, I think Deshaun's the person you need to get out, especially after that huge moment too, and that speech, and the playing of the twist and just him surviving that. I think he's got a good resume, so I think you got to get out Deshaun before Danny. So I have Danny at 4.
Yeah, I've got Danny at 5, and again, it's so here's why Danny is actually below like Ricard for me.
Mm-hmm.
The preview, as I've learned from the previews, they are very tricky.
Yeah,
and the preview showcased Danny really finding that idol. I don't think he finds the idol, man. I think that they're trying to give a lot of hope for it, which is awesome. But I'm worried, kind of like in the way that you were worried about Ricard, getting that huge episode and then being the one. I just think that if there's a double, or if there's something a little strange about the episode, I think that Danny just kind of sits there as the one to me that's like, Ricard's at the top because I think that he's going to get immunity. Xander's at the top because he's got an idol. Heather and Erica are really great to string along, unless you really get out, unless he's got the idol, which I really think that because they teased him getting in, I don't think he's going to get it. I think that Danny's, after Deshaun, it's really just a slow burn until the end.
Well, it's obvious they are on the bottom, so it's fair to put them at the bottom of your ranking. The only reason I have Ricard lower, and I have Ricard at 5, the only reason I have Ricard lower is because I think if Danny gets an idol and Deshaun wins immunity, or vice versa, like
you got to take the shot.
Deshaun plays his. Let's say Deshaun finds the idol and Danny wins immunity. Danny has immunity. Deshaun has the idol. Xander has an idol. That's 3 people who are gonna be safe.
Yeah.
Deshaun and Danny are gonna vote for Ricard. It's really just like it's very hard to picture that. I mean, I think Ricard is fine. I think this was the big blunder for Xander. I think this was meant to show that Xander had the shot and didn't take it. And I'm just a little worried that Deshaun and Danny are gonna find a way to get the votes to sway against Ricard. But I still think Ricard is safe. But I do think this is the last episode before the finale. We're going to get a big boot here, and I just think it would make sense for it to be reserved for either Deshaun or Ricard, because at this point, I think they're the 2 front runners, and it's really going to be whoever can take the other person out. If Ricard takes out Deshaun, I think Ricard is likely my number 1 headed into the finale. If Deshaun takes out Ricard, I think Deshaun is my number 1 for the finale, because right now I'm losing steam on Xander because I just don't think he's made that move yet. I think he wasted his shot this time. I think Heather doesn't really have a shot. Erica has been playing really well, but just doesn't scream winner to me. I just really think it's going to be either Ricard or Deshaun, whoever takes out the other person first. I have Deshaun at the bottom because I think he is on the outs. And I think if they do split a vote between Danny and Deshaun, I think they're always going to go for Deshaun before Danny.
Yeah.
It just makes sense because I think Deshaun's going to beat you in the end better than Danny, because Danny hasn't really made the resume, even though Danny's a lovable guy. And I would vote for Danny and Dan because I think he's played a seamless game. So it's really, I don't know. I have Ricard down there only because I could see it being Ricard is that big boot before the finale, and that's what propels Deshaun's winner edit in the finale. Or Ricard finally gets rid of Deshaun, and that kind of solidifies it. Ricard like you said, takes Heather
Right.
and Xander and runs away
And
with
that's
it.
it.
So that's why I have those there. I mean, I'm not very confident. It's either because I just feel like
Agreed.
Deshaun and Danny is so obvious because they're on the outs. But again, like at this
Yeah.
point, it's a 4-2 split. Like it makes almost too much sense to get rid of either
It's
Deshaun
really
or Danny.
it's really hard because you're trying to figure out who's going to win immunity without
Mhm.
knowing what the challenge is, and you
Mhm.
kind of have to just decide, are you going to go with consistency or are you going to go with what could be great for an editing
Mhm.
perspective?
Yeah.
And I think for me, I mean, I don't see a way in which Deshaun survives unless he gets another immunity chance, and there are just too many people who can beat him. I mean,
Mhm.
Xander is rock solid pretty much every immunity challenge until these final moments in which you've seen Danny for the first time, you've seen Deshaun there before, you've seen Ricard
Mhm.
there before. I think that Xander will pretty much always be in the final two of an immunity challenge, and it really just kind of rotates. But not all three of them can win. It can
Right.
only be one person, and you
Mhm.
don't get these random twists too
Yeah.
often. So I just Deshaun's got a target on his back, and I don't really see him not
Yeah.
getting shot with it.
Yeah, yeah. I think Deshaun's in a do or die position right now because, yeah, like I said, I just don't see them saying, "Oh, Danny and Deshaun, we got to get out Danny." I
Yeah,
think it's going to be
no way.
Deshaun's the more vocal person, even though I think Danny has been playing a better game than Deshaun. He's been
Yeah,
getting a
100%.
lot less blood on his hands, and he hasn't been floating. He's been making strategic decisions. It'll be interesting because I think last boot before the finale, I don't see it being like a Heather or Erica. I think it's going to be someone big. So you think it's Deshaun, I think it's Deshaun, so that'll keep us tied if we're right. But it'll be interesting. I'm excited for this finale coming up because after this week, we get to predict who's going to place fifth, fourth, third, second, and first all in the same episode, which is going to be crazy. And how I think we should go about that is because usually it's like we pick the person, whatever place we had them, that's how many points we get. But because all five people are going to be essentially going home in some facet, what I think we should do is rank them 1 through 5, and then depending on how they place. So say, okay, I'm just going to use A, B, C, D, E. We have them in that order, and that's the boot order. You get 5 points if you're close, but then if we have it like E, D, C, B, A or whatever, if you had whoever goes home in fifth place at the top, you only get 1 point. So you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah, like
that
depending
does.
on where
No,
you
it
place
does.
them. Yeah, yeah. So you get 5 points if you get their placement correctly, and then you lose a point for every placement you were off. So that way, if you get all 5 correct, you get 25 whole points. And if you only get 4 correct, we'll figure it out. I think it's the mathematic. Yeah, we'll figure it out off camera, but I think that'll be the best way to do it, just to predict the final 5. Even though after this week, it might be very obvious what the final 5 may shape out to look like. But yeah, I mean, it's been a fun season. I'm excited to see how it wraps up, especially with just really big contenders. I think right now, Deshaun, Danny, even Erica, Ricard, and Xander, I think all 5 of them have a case to win. I think Heather's the only one who really can't make a case for herself right now. And if she ends up making this huge move and maybe blindside Xander with his idol in his pocket, maybe she'll have a case. That's what makes this so
Oh,
exciting.
yeah.
So,
Oh,
yep. So, Zach, where can they find you on the internet, dude?
the same place as always. At Zacharaba39 on Twitter, at
That's right.
ZLove with 3 E's on Instagram,
Cool.
TikTok at ZLove with 3 E's 39, and that's really it. That's really
Yeah.
it. And right here, you can also find me on YouTube on my own channel. I sing. I've got
Yeah,
my
he does.
circle audition video. I've got a bunch of stuff.
Cool. Yeah, you can find me here on this YouTube channel that you're watching us on. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, please, people, because the more subscribers we get and the more comments and likes we get, the more this show gets out there, the more this channel grows traction. And eventually, once we hit a certain amount of subscribers, we can start making money on this thing, and Zach can get a nice paycheck for talking reality TV, which is something everyone dreams of doing.
What we want.
Yeah, you can also find me at Dylan_Randazzo on Twitter. You can find me at the State Theater in Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat on December 16th, 17th.
Yes, sir.
Not 16th, sorry, 26th,
No,
27th,
sir.
and 28th.
You will find us at a theater. You will find us at a different theater on December 17th,
Yes,
16th.
that's
You will
what
find
that
us
was
at
in
a
my
different
brain.
theater.
Yeah, we will be seeing
Find us in a
Spider-Man
different
No Way
theater.
Home. on the
Spider-Man
16th.
No Way
We'll have a
Home.
review for that. And of course, Marvelous Movie Mondays every Monday, our podcast, Marvel podcast. Zach will be guesting on it in January, doing some Marvel trivia, our inaugural trivia match. We're going to see how that goes. Zach is ready to take down his opponents, Kelsey, and one other opponent that I will announce by the end of this week on the next Marvelous Movie Monday. So I cannot wait. And then they'll shoot their promos. It'll be really fun. We'll do it WrestleMania style. It'll be great. I have to send them all the categories to study for. But yeah, I'm really, really excited.
I'm pumped.
Zach,
I'm ready to
any
go.
last words? Yeah, who has your recipe for reality this week, Zach?
You know what? I'm gonna give it. It's a tie for me. One is because I want her to be better, or not to be better, but to feel better, and that's Tasha.
Yeah,
Because I'm wishing the best
I
for
like
her.
that.
And then the other person who has my recipe for reality, I'm gonna give it to Liana. I'm gonna give it to two strong women of color this week.
Yeah,
The
nice.
the conversations were beautiful from
Mhm.
Liana, and I just think that we're seeing a phenomenal year for women of color, and I think that that's super important, and people of color in general.
Yeah.
Finally, like, front and center in the world of reality TV, and just, people getting to see them and connect with them and feel like they're a
Mhm.
part of this world. But I'll give it to Liana.
Great. And I'm gonna give it to Danny. I think he was someone I was worried was gonna go home because of the stupid twist. Instead, no one went home because of the stupid twist, and he not only won immunity, but he had that amazing moment honoring his father and kind of just like getting over the guilt of his father's death when he was young. It really made me like him. And again, like I was
Agreed.
totally sold on the fact that like he's such a good player, but he's just not doesn't get that winners edit. But
Yeah.
now he's getting the content he needs. So yeah, if he wins a game, I will not be sad because I love Danny. I
Agreed.
think of all these five, if I had to place my vote for someone, it would be Danny. I just
Yeah.
love his game. I think it's just such a clean
Yeah.
game. He's
I
been in the
agree.
right move at the right time. This is the first week where he's really been on the outs of the vote. So yeah, I'm really happy for him. Even if he goes home next week, I'm very happy. But we both have Deshaun going home next week, so let's see if that comes to light
See.
or not. So excited. Next week is the Survivor and Bachelorette finales. So after this Survivor episode this week, we will
Oh
be
my
on.
God.
We will record sometime
It's
this
a big week
weekend.
next week.
We'll record sometime this weekend, doing our predictions for how we think the final. It will be final 3, I think, of Michelle's season. Actually, wait, I think we have 2 more weeks of Michelle. Uh,
Yeah, we've
yeah.
got 2
Anyway,
weeks of Michelle.
it's fine. We'll predict how we think the final 3 on Michelle will do. We'll predict the final 5 on Survivor, and then we'll be talking about the Survivor and Bachelorette finales, which is crazy, crazy weird. Thank you, Zach, for joining. Always fun,
Thank
as
you.
always. Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Glad that we match almost down to the T.
Yeah,
It's
except
crazy.
for the T. Yep.
Except for the
Um,
except for
yeah,
the
that's
T.
right. All right. See you all next time.